Today, we are joined by Anirban Ganguly, or Ani, as he likes to be referred to, who's a global vice president, head of sales, and go-to-market leader at a core data and AI product organization with over 2 decades of experience scaling SaaS and AI-driven platforms across global industries. Ani has worked at the forefront of data analytics and digital transformation, helping organizations harness intelligent systems to drive growth and performance. In this conversation, we explore a critical question. As AI reshapes industries, who benefits and who gets left behind? AI and data systems are not neutral. They reflect design, access, and power. Enterprise adoption often outpaces ethical and equitable designs. And meanwhile, leaders have to be more intentional with aligning their AI systems with systemic equity infrastructure. So we're going to talk about these topics, or AI specifically, accessibility, in different categories. So the first category I really want to talk about with Ani is systems and power. So I think for me, AI is often positioned as objective. The question I have is, where do you see bias, Ani, or inequity showing up in a real world application? Can you kind of share with the audience? And again, welcome to Conversation Café. We are excited to have you and share your knowledge and expertise.
Absolutely. So first off, Dr. Gerardo, you have been my friend, and it's really appreciate you having me here. This is a topic that, I care deeply about, not just from a technology standpoint, but from a leadership and social responsibility standpoint as well. Because AI today isn't just another wave of technology. It's becoming infrastructure. It's shaping the decisions. It's the new generation of the erstwhile decision support system, as we used to call the BIs, the business intelligence, right? The access to opportunity, and in many cases, outcomes for people who don't even realize that AI is involved. So when we talk about AI, we are not just talking about automation or efficiency. I think we are talking more about who gets access to advantage, right? Now, diving right into your question that, AI's position as objective. Now, where does the bias shows up? So that has been a topic I think that people are talking from years. At least I personally know, right? I mean, for the last maybe 7 or 8 years, that ethical AI, ethics and bias. So yeah, this is one of the biggest misconception, I would say, because
Correct.
AI feels objective because it's math driven, right? It's algorithm driven, numbers driven, but it's actually human decisions embedded into systems at scale. Bias shows up in 3 main places. So if you look at it, maybe the data bias, the point I already touched upon, like if historical data reflects inequality, AI will learn and repeat it. For that matter, you teach AI that the sun sets in the west, it tells you that because it's dependent on the data. Number 2, the design bias. What problem we choose to solve and for whom. Number 3, the access bias. Who even gets to use the system? So a simple example, I'll tell you, I think you will like it, the audience will like it. The hiring algorithm. If historically certain groups were underrepresented, AI doesn't correct that. It oftentimes reinforces it unless intentionally designed otherwise. So AI isn't neutral. It's a multiplier to my observation. It amplifies whatever foundation you made or the we built it on. So that will be my take on it.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I haven't quite heard it in the way you just put it. So you broke that down to 3 really nice approaches of bias. Because what I hear as a person who tried to learn, AI as far as how to best lean into it, because it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. So the question becomes, there are 2 options at this point. Learn it and understand how it could help you, and learn it and how to understand it can harm you as well. So those to me are the only 2 options. So I think naturally the student or the curious person out there who is kind of trying to figure out, where do I start? I think that you're bringing up bias in the data, which means the data itself is only as good as what we put into it. Who puts into it, right? So I think that kind of skews it to your point where you were saying in relation to, yes, this is information. It extracts information. That's almost like concepts or core concepts of information. And then over time, as more people start using it, kind of like Wikipedia, in really layman's terms for me, because I'm not an AI specialist, but I'm a person who likes learning. So I think for me, it's interesting that it's only as good as what information is put into the system. I think the data bias, the design bias, and the access bias, you can't talk about one without talking about the other, because all three of them collectively kind of spells out if we're looking for something to help us, then we have to understand it has its own biases, but so do we.
Yeah.
As people trying to extract or kind of learn or kind of gather information. I think that's a very valid point. So thank you for bringing that. And I wanted to kind of follow up with, like, who do you think currently has the greatest access to the AI advantage? Because again, it's new and it's presented in the extremes, in the really great and the really bad. And rarely do we hear about it in the middle. So would you mind like unpacking that a little bit for the audience? Like, who currently has the greatest access to AI-driven advantages, in your opinion?
Absolutely, doctor. Before that, I'll just hearing your explanation. I was remembering one thing. I mean, close to 10 years ago, not exactly 10 years, maybe a little less. I was speaking at the IBM Think, the annual flagship conference, and there we were talking about the blurry boundaries of reality, right? With augmented reality and AI and everything coming in, and we spoke about the red pill and the blue pill, right? The two options. And when you spoke about that AI gives us two options, I mean, it reminded me of that. So again, coming to the greatest access to the AI advantage today, that question, I think right now, the advantage again is concentrated in few groups, about 2 to 3 groups. See, how I would like to categorize it is the large enterprises, they have the capital and the data, of course. Then the tech forward organizations like that understand how to operationalize AI. So they are in the midst of technology. They live and breathe technology. So those organizations, I mean, probably all the .ai firms, right, who has been kind of mushrooming up. A lot of them have grown into potential, customers of those organizations. And increasingly, the number 3, individuals who know how to use the AI tools effectively. That predominantly brings to my mind, again, this is not a generation bias to our topic, but mostly the Gen Zs, right? So they're mostly, most capable, or, in their eyes.
I think they're more open. They're more open to trying it versus running away from it. Yeah, I see that.
A lot of others, sometimes people fear AI. They think, okay, it is going to do this, do that, but they embraced it, right? So what's interesting is we are at an inflection point right now. For the first time, AI tools are becoming accessible at an individual level. So there's a potential shift happening, a paradigm shift from institutional advantage to individual leverage. Because we all know this all Grok, Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, they even have a free version. It's basically like a Facebook, like an YouTube. It can be used by anybody. So that has changed the world. Probably post 2023, like we used to call post COVID, post 2023, it's a new world when the ChatGPTs of the world were out in the public for public users and public access. So the question is, will access scale fast enough to offset the existing imbalance? That part is still unclear in my mind. So I'll leave it for your thoughts and analysis.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty brilliant because, I mean, if you think about it, right, what you're referring to, at least how I'm interpreting this, right, just from you and me talking, is really what you're saying is accessibility is shifting. And that shift goes, to your point, from the industry to the public. Right. So the industry held on to it, played with it, and now they release it. Now the public is going to consume it. Right. But what I find really interesting with this specific topic, right, is the access and the opportunity. And I think for me, one of the things that I would love to hear your opinion on, like we just talked about access and the importance of it. Right. And you talked about the history of, yes, companies started and now it's more individualized for people to explore, right, if they're willing to. So my question to you, in relation to the masses, right? And AI and people being able to access. I think for me, I always wonder, like, what are the barriers preventing smaller organizations? In my world, I work with a lot of nonprofits, a lot of smaller organizations. So how they might even approach or even begin to think about approaching AI could be completely different to maybe someone in the public sector or the private sector, right? Where you have a little bit, to your point, capital, where you have a little bit of money to invest in such a program, right? So for me, The question that I have that comes to mind is what barriers prevent smaller organizations or even underrepresented leaders, right, from really
Exactly.
leveraging AI systems? What are your thoughts on that? I'm looking forward to hearing that
Yep.
response.
Absolutely, Dr. Gerardo. So that's a very good question, in fact, because, like to the previous point, when I spoke about the enterprise organizations, smaller orgs doesn't have access to that much data. For that matter, my friends and colleagues, they were past colleagues, they were in McKinsey. So McKinsey is a different data channel. I'm not nitpicking on any particular organization. But so
Of
those
course.
world, they have, their access to a lot of data. But for an SMB farm, that may not be true, may not be pertinent. So there are few big barriers. I think I see 3 to 4 in my mind. I think the gaps is the number one is probably the awareness gap, not knowing
Correct.
what's possible, what's achievable, what can be scaled. Second comes in my mind is the capability gap. That's like, lacking the technical or the strategic expertise to scale. Number three, we already touched upon that, the data gap. Not
Correct.
having, it's not only not having data, but not having the clean and usable data. So that's why the data quality, the
Oh, yes.
compliance, security, like
Hmm.
GDPR, CCPA, right? Those text precedents. So a lot of people doesn't have the clean and usable data to operate with, the data gap. And last but not the least, it's the confidence gap. That's the
Yes.
hesitation to adopt the AI due to risk or uncertainty. So, and the
Yes.
last one
Well,
is
I was just going to say that what's interesting is we are ingrained and taught aversion very early on. Something new, I don't know it, I got to proceed it with caution, whether it's good for us or bad for us. If it's new, we always approach something with caution, right?
correct.
So it's interesting to see how people take that and push through it
Yeah.
in order to get them to the curious enough to even try to just dip your toe into it, right? So I kind of that thought kind of ran through my head, and I just wanted to share that with you. So
No, you are absolutely right. You kind of spoke the language of my mind because we were talking about, the risk and uncertainty in the last point, the confidence gap, and you were very right. That one is underrated, right? A lot of
yes, yes,
leaders aren't resisting AI, but they just don't know where to start without making a costly mistake. I will give you an example, right? I mean, real world example. So as an executive leader, we kind of face the challenge that, okay, if you're not talking about operationalizing AI, maybe your stock doesn't see an uptick. Let's be fair. I mean, that's what it's happening, right? I mean, you need to show the
correct.
world that you are AI ready. What percentage of your revenue is AI revenue? Even today, in that other podcast I was referring to in the beginning, right? Whoever's done it, right? It was a
Mhm,
GSI leader I was telling you. So he has
mhm.
mentioned there that there is nothing called AI revenue. That definition itself is very blurry because
That-
it's very convoluted, right?
correct.
So that basically you were absolutely right. You hit the nail right on the head. And other challenges, I mean, leaders, including myself, we probably, I mean, I shudder telling that, but we probably don't know right now that how to commercialize AI. That's why
Mhm.
when you think about making an investment into AI, you think, what's my ROI? Is it little unclear,
Yes,
little uncertain? But at the same time, you have to show the world that you are AI ready. You are investing on data center. Maybe you are a man company or a fan company to an SMB farm to a very small
right,
farm. So everybody is
correct.
living that challenge today. So
Yes.
how to avoid that costly mistake? So the issue isn't just access to tools. It's the access to understanding and guidance.
I really enjoy how you break that down. But what, again, for me, just trying to understand, hopefully people out there listening, it really is just a curiosity factor enough to learn enough to feel confident enough to just jump
Yeah,
in. Or even, like I said, just dip the toe in it, right? Because you never know. You don't know what you don't know until you try understanding it, right? That's just a natural learning. That's how we approach learning as people, I think. So I think that when we're talking about the other piece of this coin that we're talking about is like when we have enterprise systems, when we have new technology, sometimes what I've seen is that we have to catch up with the technology because technology wants to put out its products so quickly and it doesn't worry about who gets it at first because technology, at least through my eyes, it's a long-term gain, right? I think that when you're
absolutely.
talking about something like AI, it feels like a long term gain. So, with that being
Yeah,
said, when there's new stuff coming out, and then people gravitate towards it, and then they learn from it, and then they get used to it, and then it becomes like second nature, right? Think about what Facebook used to look like, right? What was it? MySpace, right? MySpace, right?
Yeah.
People were like, oh, I don't know. And then everybody was on it. And then all of a sudden, all these versions later, right? Which is really funny.
Right.
So the question I have for you is, how do enterprise systems, right? Because they're in that rush to be the first, right? To be the first that people use most.
Right.
How do enterprise systems, in your opinion, unintentionally exclude certain communities while trying to be the first? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. First of all, when you told about the Facebook's adoption, it came to my mind. We probably remember there used to be a platform called Orkut. I mean, Orkut, O-R-K-U-T, and then it was shut down.
Yes.
Everybody was there. And Facebook was probably more embraced in the North American geography industry to start with, but then it had a blast of adoption in APAC and maybe the South Asian communities and everywhere. I think probably it's even more used as of today. So yes, I mean, that's how people were familiarized with the Facebooks of the world today. So coming to, the unintentional exclusion point from the enterprise systems, right? Most enterprise systems, I think today are designed for scale and efficiency, not inclusion. So what that means in practice, basically, I think they optimize for the average user, and rightly so, because they don't take the two ends of the curve, but the middle of the curve, more optimized for the average user. They require structured data, which many smaller players don't have. Little bit tying back to the older point, the clean and usable data and accessibility to that. And number three, they assume the resources like the time, money, the dollars, expertise that not everyone has. Right? So exclusion isn't always intentional. It kind of became a structural point for them. And that's where the idea of intelligent equity comes in. So through that, it's about asking that if people just ask about the intelligent equity, the org should be making themselves ready to deliver. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think hearing it and you put it in that way, the inequity of AI, right? I think to me, it makes sense to me. In order for us to all benefit, we all have to access, right? So equality is one thing. Equity is the verb to get to the equality.
Yes.
So equity, the verb, in order for us to make sure that when we're putting out new technology, it's funny that I don't think many companies, and I could be wrong, I'll gladly own that, but I don't think, especially when you just shared what you just shared about how tech companies really look at upscaling, sustainability, replicating, and then again, long term. That is the priority, and that inclusion will come along, right? They're almost like inclusion will make its own way in, which I find really fascinating. I think that I never heard it quite put in that way, but now that you said it that way, it makes sense to me because you're right. As a business, like all businesses want to make sure that they're able to keep their lights on and pay their people.
Yep.
Right? Yep. So when you're coming up with a product, at least the technology side from a user, not a person who works in the field, but from somebody who benefits from technology, it really is interesting that I never thought of it in that way. So I want to thank you for kind of just breaking it down a little bit differently than what I'm used to.
Yeah,
and I think that when leaders start thinking about what is their responsibility in order to kind of get to the goal, whatever the goal is of creating this new widget or this new technology, whatever that is, we want to make sure that, to your point, launch it and we can fine tune it and people will like it. And then we can fine tune it some more and we can give all these versions. And that's why we get all these upgrades and updates in technology.
Correct.
Right? But it's really interesting. Imagine that if leaders did, in fact, build with equity in mind. I think, to me, if a leader is thinking of equity first, meaning the accessibility of this, the affordability of this, the user-friendly of it, the being able to utilize it, kind of like a lot of the social platforms, they really depend on us users to kind of figure it out. And they say, here's some tutoring, some videos, some YouTube videos. But imagine a piece of that does happen because some of these companies do launch places where you can go and learn a little bit. And then they want you to learn enough up to a point until you get to the point of, now I have to pay for that next level of service. Right? So
and
even that part
for me and everything.
To me, it's like even that equity part is like, okay, if a company thought about it, maybe the paid method or the paid subscriptions could have multi-layers. That's one of the things that I've seen on some of the platforms like Substack, where you have subscribers and you have multi-layer subscribers. I'm thinking, imagine if that was front-loaded when a new technology is released up front in order to kind of allow the user who's going to benefit from its usage in a way that's a little bit more intentional, a little bit more different, right? As opposed to because X company does it, then we're going to do it that way.
Yeah.
Or Y software does it, they doing it, they get millions of billions of people, then we're going to do it that way. And then we get stuck. So and then I always wonder about the responsibility of the leaders in this process of really kind of pushing forward like this new thing, or even kind of reintroducing this old thing, right? That we want to kind of repurpose and put it out there again. So I think for me, leadership responsibility becomes ever so important. What role do leaders play in ensuring that these AI systems are equitable and not just efficient?
So before that, since you touched upon that, right, we spoke about intelligent equity. So when I say that it's about asking, I think I'll give you a very real world AI ready example. So it's like prompt engineering, right? You have to ask the right set of questions to AI in order for it to deliver the best and most usable output for you. So it's the same, paradox for people and the organization. So they are probably waiting for the right asks. And now the leadership responsibility, that's an ever important topic in today's world, right? So I think when it comes to this entire AI influx, the leadership is the area where this becomes really critical, because AI strategy is not just a technology decision. It's a value decision at the end of the day. So the leaders, they pretty much have to ask themselves that what outcomes are we optimizing for? Who benefits from this system? Customers, users, and who might be unintentionally disadvantaged? Remember the point that I mentioned about, if there is a traditionally one particular community have accessed a particular recruiting site. So AI doesn't do inclusion. They pretty much give a unintentionally the advantage, at the same time unintentionally disadvantage. So that's the important point. And importantly, are we measuring that unintentional bias? If you are not measuring equity, you are not managing it. So the leadership responsibility is about moving from, I think, can we build this mindset, to should we build this, and how responsibly should we build this? So that's the ecosystem shift, the mental ecosystem shift that the leadership should live and breathe on, and then we can see a change.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair point, because it goes beyond just quality control. Quality control is only a piece of the pie. It's not the entire pie. So I think that, to your point, when leaders are actually in this process of creating technology pie, it has to have taste testers to allow us to understand what might be the areas that could improve. And if that means accessibility, so be it. If that means the quality, or maybe, the code that a certain software uses is, truncates while you're trying to use it, maybe let's figure that out, right? The quality controls really built in, as opposed to let's get it open enough and then we can work on it as we go. I think that's a very fair point, and I want to thank you for that. I think that the other piece to the leadership responsibility, I think when we're talking about systems that aren't equitable, right? Because they're just busy releasing it and not necessarily into the quality controls until they get enough users to tell them that their quality, something's great or something's not great.
Yep.
How do you think, how can organizations really be a little bit more intentional with their equity into their data and analytics strategies? Because you're right, it's not about inclusion, it's about efficiency. But imagine that's like saying you work with people on your team and the team isn't going to be identical. right? Everybody on that
Yeah,
team brings a
absolutely.
special, unique perspective to the team in order to make it better. So I'm using that analogy that when we're talking about AI, how can organizations embed equity into their data and analytic strategies in order to make not just the team of AI, but the entire AI better when it comes to more
Yeah.
intentionality of being more equitable in its design before it gets released, as opposed to trying to catch up or not catching up at all, depending.
Yeah.
How do you think organizations could embed equity into the data and analytic strategy as part of the planning process and not a reactive process?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Very, very, very good question. Very good question. Because we are, data and analytics at heart. I mean, that's probably where I've spent, I mean, that's the commonality into the various roles that I've done, maybe in the last 20, 22 years, right? So it's very interesting to talk about this. So I think this is, about building what I call is uh, the systematic equity infrastructure. I think the point that we started with. So the steps that the organization practically take here, I think the diverse inputs into the design. So this means, not just the diverse teams, but the diverse perspective influencing decisions. So it's an aggregation of the various perspective into the decision making process. So that's one way. I mean, that's the first step about, embedding that EI equity. Then being transparent, the transparent data practice, as we call it, right? So that means
Correct.
understanding what data is used and what's missing. I mean, informed data, not just raw data. And also maybe the continuous monitoring of it. The AI system shouldn't be just, set up like that in a mode which is set and forget, but they need
Correct.
governance. That's why the data governance is a very pivotal topic even for this AI ready systems. And maybe another one more thing is tied to business outcomes. To the other point, commercializing point, that when you are
Yep.
doing all this embedding, what is the outcome? I mean, you are delivering to business. How is the tomorrow's world is going to be different from today from a business consumption perspective? So because equity isn't just ethical, it's strategic. Inclusive
Correct.
systems perform better over time. So it's more
Yes.
sustainable, right? So that's
Yes.
probably the steps or the thought process the organizations can bake it into their DNA when they think about embedding equity into.
There's been numerous studies out there, a great number of
Yeah.
them that have properly vetted, that have proven that typically any organization that has a systemic equity infrastructure built into it, a solid one, not a performative one, so that's different, a solid one outperforms their competitors by at least 30% as far as their return on investment. So understanding that aspect,
Yeah.
again, planning ahead of it as opposed to reacting to it. Can you imagine the time and the effort and the dollars and the power, the capacity power that one company can
Hmm.
save on if they front loaded this in the planning process and not in the
Right.
reactive post production process? I think that really makes,
Correct.
it's been proven time and time and time again that yes, this adds value. And I always talk about the return on investment. And I don't think that
Yeah.
people talk about systemic equity infrastructure in
Yeah.
the same sentence as a return on investment, unless we understand what does that mean, right? How do we come up with the right measurements, the right
Right.
outcomes? It's not just your traditional outcomes that any business has to have, but you have to understand what is the environment and how the systemic equity infrastructure can really help an organization identify, create awareness, and the normalizing of we're going to embark in something new and it's going to be
Yeah.
uncomfortable, but this is why we're going to do it. We're going to do it because this is going to help us improve X and Y.
Correct.
And then we're
Hmm.
going to monitor it to make sure that it's just not something, it's a goal that just sits on the shelf, but it becomes an active, living goal. And I think for me, systemic equity infrastructure
Yeah.
does that. It creates the infrastructure to say that not only are we going to create awareness, but we're going to have a discovery process. And then once we finish the discovery process, we're going to do, the awareness, look for it, and then we're going to share it. And then we're going to talk about why does that matter to your organization? That's no different than any other outcome.
Yeah.
But,
Absolutely.
but The difference is with systemic equity infrastructure, you have to take the environment into account. Because if the environment doesn't allow you to freely and safely apply openly what you just learned in that workshop that maybe your company send you for $1,500, then that's a waste of time, money, and that means the environment stays the same. And then people expect change when we're not working on the infrastructure of it all. So I think that's really important. And I think when you're working in the AI space, it has to be upfront. Otherwise, we will be catching up.
If these things are not outcome driven, then ultimately this fails, right? And then there is no future of it, right? So when people are thinking about it, they have to kind of, make this part of their initial thought process. Otherwise, I mean, there's no repeatability, there is no future to it. Yeah, absolutely.
There's two more things I want to ask you.
Sure.
So the first one really is about reflecting a little bit. And let's start with the first one that I want to ask. What does your own perspective, based on your experience, never mind where, or I don't care about where, but your experience, your lived professional experience, could you share with the audience, what does fair access to AI opportunities look like in practice, in your own opinion? What would that look like?
Very, very good question. I mean, close to my heart. In today's world, it is even more pertinent. I think probably machine learning was the oldest form of AI, if you agree, right? That was existing. And now we are kind of using it in every possible day-to-day task that we do. And sometimes even the household chores as well, right? Like maybe I have seen videos that robots it's not only manufacturing cars, but it may be making your bed as well, right? So it is very, very pertinent in today's world. So to my mind, and again, experience that I really lived, I think the fair access doesn't really mean always equal outcomes. What it means is equitable opportunity to be benefited. So in practice, that looks like, so maybe lowering the barrier to entry for AI tools, because you have to make that available, right? Otherwise, you are not being fair, quote unquote, to the people. Number two, making education and enablement widely available so that when the generations to come, they can think themselves as we have grown up AI ready, like the word computer savvy in the older world should be AI ready. Then designing systems that basically adapt to different user context, because every human being, every user is different. That adaptability is the key, not just the most privileged ones. So it has to be adapting to the multiple user context. And I think we are moving towards a world where the AI literacy is the term we need to think, because AI literacy becomes as important as digital literacy. Concluded after.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to piggyback off of what you just said, because I think incorporating that. So one of the things, I mean, as I've shared with you, so I teach at college level, and in college classes, because AI is so new, there's some, depending on where I have taught, there are some higher education institutions that say, we're going to embrace AI in a sense like this is how it could be helpful to you, right? But you also have the complete opposite end of that spectrum of some colleges that say AI cannot be used in any form when you're writing, say, a paper. So I think it's interesting because remember I talked about the catching up, the technology, and then we got to catch up to the technology. I kind of feel like higher education is one of those customers that could be an amazing customer, an amazing partner, only if they incorporate it into, to your point exactly, is the literacy part of it. Can you imagine in elementary school, grabbing 2 classes to introduce what is AI. And then in middle school, you get the next level. And in high school, you get the more intense. And then if you decide to pursue that after, then, pursue it. But to intentionally sprinkle it across the pre-K through 12 sections of higher education. And then you have to say, okay, that's one part of it, but then post-secondary education. So how are we going to make sure that people understand how to best utilize? I know that some fear that, AI will take teaching jobs. And
no, absolutely.
Again, the machine can only be as good, smart, and bright as the people who put the information into the machine.
Exactly.
Right? How it's fed tells us how well-rounded it is or how unbiased it could be if people are at the table. So I think for me, it's really interesting as you're saying that, and I'm thinking, like, even in my other hat as an educator, I'm looking
Great
forward
to
to
know.
seeing how these two industries, AI and higher education, kind of meet in the middle somewhere. Because
Excellent.
to the point that it's not going away, number one. Number two, we need to make sure that our students can actually put a sentence together, that actually can write a sentence together, can write a story together, could do a subject, verb, and object
Yeah.
in one sentence, right? Without depending on AI. Now, write it and to help you
Hmm.
improve, that's one thing. But even that, like, are we teaching our students those differences?
Actually, incubating a very interesting thought.
We can't talk about AI without having some form of higher education as an interesting space for AI.
Correct. Yeah, you know what? I mean, what I was thinking, I know that you have been associated in the New England as a geography, but in every 50 states, be it in different states
Yes,
or in different country, or rather in a different geographic location, the AI
yes,
adaptability readiness might be a nuanced thing because even in we talk about the protocols, the litigation, the
yes,
rules of the land, law of the land might be different, right?
correct.
So ultimately, it is applying to different geographical people or different human beings in a different way when the AI adaptability into the educational thing is coming. So that is the point that I was thinking as well, because there is probably no uniformity defined as of today, right now. Maybe we will get there, not yet. Yep,
Yeah, I mean, you bring up the point of universal design. What does that
right.
mean in the space of education, regardless of, pre-K or
Absolutely.
post-secondary? Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I definitely wanted to, before we end up
Hmm.
ending our conversation here, I want you to think about
Sure.
this, right? No right, no wrong. It's just your opinion.
Hmm.
If you had the magic wand to wave, what would you wish for in the space, or what would be your call to action
Yeah.
for the public out there relating to AI? What would you like to do with your magic wand? Share with the audience, please.
Absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, to the point that I was making before, the organization and the individuals, right, that invest in that early will basically have a disproportionate advantage, right? That's the plan. So, I mean,
Correct.
I'm telling this because with that magic wand, preferably, I'd like to eliminate that bias completely in a systematic, in an organized, and in a very defined manner. So, here are my maybe closing thoughts about it, right? So if
Yeah.
I had to leave one thought here, AI will not automatically make the world more equitable, if you agree. But it can. How? If the leaders, us, we all, the leaders of mankind, we are intentional towards it. Because at the end of the day, AI reflects us because we are the prompt engineers. We feed data into
Yes.
it, we drive it. Our priorities are embedded into it, our biases, our ambition, our usage pattern. So the real question isn't just what can AI do? It's rather what kind of system and society do we want to build with it? So I'd like to, with that magic wand in place, I'd like to embed those operational rigor into the AI usage, adaptability, pressing, I mean, the expected outcome into it. And that way probably we can make AI our great friend when we think about shaping the world of tomorrow.
I appreciate the magic wand wish. Um, and lastly,
Yeah.
you've given some great carrots, some great knowledge. You've dropped some great perspectives. Let's say I'm out here listening to you and I'm going, that Ani made some sense. And I want to reach out to Ani. How would the audience members be able to reach you? What is the platforms that they can find you and become part of your village?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm happy to. I'm in LinkedIn. That's the
Yeah.
I mean professional platform that I'm definitely reachable at. I'm happy to share my LinkedIn handle or
Yes.
even to my organization's other social handles, right? Be it in the Twitter, YouTube, I mean X, sorry, Twitter is the old world, so X handle and YouTube and even Instagram, I would love to, and even my personal self. Some interested individuals, they can, so feel free to kind of share that. For some interested, individuals from the audience, happy to take the conversation forward. People are expecting to see the next flavor of AI, embracing the data analytics technology area as well. So I will love to share my coordinates with everybody.
Perfect. And so just I need one last thing before I wrap up. So would you mind spelling your name so that people who want to find you, they don't have to guess, how do I spell his name?
Absolutely.
So would you mind spelling your name, how they can find you on LinkedIn, and then make sure that, because I know you as Ani, and I know on your LinkedIn you have Ani in parentheses, but your first
You're
name
right.
is
You're
slightly
right.
different. So can you share that?
Definitely. Let me tell you. So in LinkedIn handle, I made it the Nick is the first name, like Annie, ANI, A as in Alpha, N as Nancy, I as Indiana. That's my nickname. My full name is Anirban. The first three letters are same as Annie, and then R as Romeo, B as boy, A as apple, N as Nancy. Annie, and then RBAN. Anirban is my full first name, and my last name is Ganguly. Let me spell it out here. That's G as in George, A as in apple, N as Nancy, G as George again, U as umbrella, L as lion, and Y as Yankee, the region from where family I go by Annie. So mostly I'm in with my LinkedIn handle, but I'm available in the other social channels as well. Albeit it's in the non-business platform like a Facebook or Instagram, and happy to share my company's handle as well. So people can be associated with how what are we trying to do and how we are basically working with AI into we have I'm not naming that right now here, but we have recently as we speak we have come up with a new AI enabled product. That's the latest and greatest offering. I mean, that is going to be published more in the Informatica world. I'm going to talk about it. So people, I would love for the people to be part of that journey. They see the baby, how it grows, basically handhold that. So I want to give that opportunity to anybody and everybody who's interested.
Perfect. Well, Ani, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on today and giving us a little bit of perspective of your vision, who you are, with your journey in the AI space. For the listeners out there, please hit like, hit subscribe. We are dropping episodes every 3 weeks. Would love to hear your opinion. And if I can be found on YouTube and Spotify. On YouTube, there's a link that if you think of other topics that align with Conversation Café, please shoot us a note and let us know. And we would love to kind of invite you, the listener, to kind of provide us with what are the topics you want to hear about. And I'm looking forward to having more conversations with future guests and our audience out there. So, bastante gracias. Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone. I'm looking forward to seeing you all or hearing you all during the next Conversation Café. Until then, Adios.